The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles.
Hello, Charles. How's your weekend been? I heard you got into a bit of a stoush.
No, I didn't. I didn't get into a stoush. Just somebody in front of me just fell over of their own free will.
Of their own free will?
Of their own free will. I was walking along happily, merrily minding my own business. I was very pleasant. I was very happy.
Because I saw a video.
Oh yeah.
That, like, gotta be honest, it made it look a little bit like you dropped a guy, like you shoulder charged straight into him,
and then
with a look of glee in your eyes.
With a look of glee, yeah, the look of glee. But no, the glee was because I was minding my own business. You see, the look of glee. Like, look, if somebody did drop down in front of me, then I don't think I even noticed.
I mean, I'm not
even sure that I was thinking about that. Like, it would have been that I didn't even notice him there.
See, I've heard, Charles, that sometimes people just fall over spontaneously.
Yes.
Like there's an advertising hoarding in the way.
Yes, exactly.
And you would be thinking at that point, well, that's some classic slapstick.
Yes.
And that's where the look of glee comes
It's a
from.
bit
Not for having shoulder charged someone to the ground.
You know how when you eat a banana and you throw the peel on the ground.
That's right, I do.
And then, your mum or something walks along and slips over.
Whoops.
And everyone just bursts into laughter.
Oh, it's the oldest joke in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
It reminds me of the time that Barnaby Joyce actually came up upon a planter box.
Yes.
And
Yes, exactly.
and was on the ground. That was just, we all had gleeful looks on our faces when we saw that.
Exactly.
In unrelated news, Peter Costello has resigned today, Charles, as the chair of Nine Entertainment.
Right.
Yeah, interesting story.
Okay. Because I think he had a very similar incident over the weekend.
Some have said that there were similarities, but they were misinformed, Charles.
Yeah, and look, I'm in no position. I certainly don't think I should be resigning over my very, very innocent walking incident that happened to involve somebody, falling over in front of me.
Very important to note too that if Peter Costello, in a sense, took a tumble today,
yes,
nobody should have an expression of glee. But if they did, you wouldn't want to judge them because that's classic corporate slapstick. We'll get into it after this. So this is the news. I think it was Thursday evening, Canberra Airport. Peter Costello is interviewed with a bit of a sort of camera in the face style of the sort used by a current affair by a journalist from The Australian called Liam Mendes.
Yes.
And if you look at the footage, the Herald's own website, so the Nine newspaper's website, shortly afterwards reported it as appeared to knock over a journalist from The Australian. And they had that as their front page story. So the journos at the Herald were obviously like, I know this guy's the boss, but this is a big fucking deal.
Yes. And the thing that was interesting was that the reason why Peter Costello was being doorstopped by this journalist was because there have been allegations of a culture of sort of noblesse oblige within the upper ranks of Channel 9, that essentially they turned a blind eye to essentially bad behaviour, toxic masculinity.
That's what's been alleged, yeah.
Is what is being alleged. And the whole of the Nine executive team is sort of under a bit of pressure. And so, of course, the person in charge of the whole of Nine is now Peter Costello. He's the chair of the whole thing.
Was until this
incident. And so the one thing that you would want to do as the chair of Nine Entertainment is to not give off toxic masculinity vibes. Right?
Charles, I don't know because I'm obviously I'm a total beta. I would never dream of confronting anybody ever. Shoulder charging someone, even if you didn't actually touch them. It's surely not in dispute that Peter Costello kind of rushes the guy. It's in the footage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the CCTV...
And the look of glee.
The look of glee.
Because the thing is, the guy's... is he recording on his phone?
Yeah, Liam Mendes. He had his phone in the guy's face.
Because the only thing you see at the end of the video is his look of glee. Because he's so... Remember how Peter Costello always had that smug...
The smirk. He was famous for his smirk.
Yeah. Well, this was a moment where his smugness turned into a smile, didn't it? Like he actually smiled like a Cheshire cat. He really enjoyed it.
He either enjoyed it or has an awkward, I'm very upset and worried about your welfare face. Because if his first reaction was, oh, I'm so sorry, sir, you seem to have fallen over at what he alleges was an advertising hoarding, we'll see the CCTV, I think, from the airport to clear it all up.
Right.
And the journo said, you assaulted me straight away to Peter Costello.
Yes.
So if Peter Costello's demeanour was, as you might imagine, Charles, oh, this poor working journalist from a competing newspaper, but still part of the profession that I'm a senior leader in.
Yes.
I want to help you up, sir. Please, can I call an ambulance? I mean, I'm worried for your well-being. Do we need to give you a concussion test?
Yes.
That wasn't the vibe I was getting from the video.
No, it wasn't the vibe.
But I'm sure he's been misunderstood.
Yes, I think what we've got to look for here, because often in these great moments in history, I'm thinking like the Kennedy assassination and 9/11, right?
Right. I think that's equivalent.
I think that's where it's at.
Well, this is the question, Charles. Is it a single shoulder charge?
Yes, exactly.
Or was there a second shoulder charge?
Was there from
a grassy knoll?
Was there a banana peel?
Was there
on the ground?
And was there a banana peel concealed beneath the advertising hoarding?
Yes,
that was apparently there.
Exactly. Like there's a whole lot of. Or did the guy
Liam Mendes, the journo?
Liam Mendes, like, I mean, what are some other possibilities? Could it be early onset osteoporosis?
Maybe his knees could have given way.
Yes, or just through the sheer charisma of
maybe
Peter Costello.
made him weak at the knees. Yeah. How can we rule that out?
Yeah, I know exactly. There's just too many things.
Maybe he was going down on his knees to sort of beg for a job or So maybe this is the thing. He was questioning Costello about this. I think it was Darren Wick is the person from News. Who has been accused of sexually harassing female co-workers. That's been the allegation. And apparently there's lots of non-disclosure agreements.
And look, I think the whole point is that this has, the allegation going around is that this was clearly something that the upper management of Nine Entertainment either completely knew of or at least definitely should have completely known of.
Yes.
And there's been a sort of protective culture that is ultimately the charge of the people in charge.
Yeah,
like,
I mean this is something that happens in many workplaces. I certainly think Liam Mendes' own workplace probably has questions to answer. It emerged in the past week or so that a frankly shockingly high number of ABC employees said that they'd experienced harassment in the workplace and bullying. I mean. There's clearly a lot of toxicity in our newsrooms, Charles, but there's so many better ways that Nine could have handled this. They really could have just done a lot better with this situation than they did. Well, let's talk about how Nine could have fixed this really in a moment.
The Chaser Report. News you can't trust.
Well, I think the first point is maybe Peter Costello just didn't go far enough. Like, you take out one journalist, then everyone else is going to report on it, right? Shoulder charge the entire press gallery.
I mean, this is the thing.
Their shoulders will be all dislocated. They won't be able to report it.
Who knows what he did? I mean, it's still very much in dispute. But if he had tackled, you would have tackled the next person, and have them living in fear.
Yes.
That's how you create a culture of terror.
Yes, and frankly, the fact that even Nine's newspapers, like the Herald and the Age, were almost immediately reporting on this incident
as their top story on the website,
shows that they don't fear Costello enough.
They don't fear for their job.
Yes. Yeah. They probably realised that this was the guy who had about 100 billion opportunities to knife John Howard and never had the courage to.
Well, this is the best case in Costello's defence.
Yeah.
Is that this is a guy with a track record of not confronting people.
Yes.
Even when he really wants, their job.
He's obviously done a bit of work on himself and realised, you know what, maybe I can pick on somebody.
So you think this is the result
backwards.
of years of therapy?
Yes.
So after having bottled it repeatedly with John Howard,
he's
finally gone, okay, I've
you
got to put
are
myself
my nemesis.
First.
Yes.
Yeah. I need to express myself, and the way that I'm going to do this is by looming towards this journal. That's one option, Charles. But also, many people would say that there was considerable currency to be had in attacking a journalist from the Australian. I mean, there are plenty of people in the media who would be happy to watch pay-per-view footage of people who work for the Australian being
yes, in fact, yeah,
pushed to the ground.
That could become a sort. Yeah, that's right. That's a whole new channel.
That's a whole channel.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have thought
Nine, go for it.
Yeah, sort of a journalistic UFC.
Yeah.
I'm imagining, Charles, something like the scene from Anchorman, where you get Chris Kenny in an arena.
Yes.
Peter Costello's in there as well.
Yes.
I mean, David Marr would be amazing for the sort of intelligentsia. You heavily arm them and just see what goes down.
Would you put Sarah Ferguson in there, or would it get too vicious?
I think she's the referee.
Oh, she's the referee.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go. But I mean, can't you imagine how enjoyable that would be? All the journos in a sort of Royal Rumble.
Anton Enos.
Anton Enos in the mix. Absolutely. Look, I think this is a killer idea. I think it could be very popular.
Who would be from Channel 10? Do they have any journalists left at Channel 10?
I mean,
trying to think.
Peter Van Onselen used to work there. He'd be pretty handy in the ring. Yeah.
I think they were all.
He's at the Daily Mail now, isn't he?
Who was Sarah Harris? Who would be? Is there anyone? I don't think.
Is Joe Hildebrand still
Joe
around?
Hildebrand. There you go.
I think he might be somewhere else.
At Binge, yeah.
At Binge. Can one be at Binge? Is that
Foxtel?
Is there
whatever
a job
it is.
where you can be at Binge? Anyway, so that's one option. But Charles, the other thing is,
Right.
I mean, if they should have stuck to the playbook, Charles. Do what they do well.
Oh, what?
Tied Liam Mendes up in NDAs. If they just got him on a non-disclosure agreement, sign his right. They could have got him while he was concussed and get him to sign a form.
Yes,
and he wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. That's the allegations say that they do with their own team.
Yes, that's the whole. That's the real issue here and that's probably why he resigned. That's probably why the board. You know, they obviously had conversations over the weekend.
Oh, no.
And they went, Peter, what were you doing? No NDAs.
No, Charles, you've made a terrible mistake. Terrible mistake. I've read the statement from Nine today.
Oh, yeah.
He was always going to retire.
Oh, right.
He was always going to retire.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, a little later in the year was the plan, and he's brought it forward.
Right.
And he's brought it forward to ahead of the Olympics, which Nine was covering, and therefore he would have been able to go to
the
Olympics.
Olympics.
This means that Costello won't get the junket to the Olympics, presumably.
Right.
But it's just what's a few months here or there. I imagine he just was woke up this morning, was just like, you know what?
Know what?
I don't need
nothing
this
to
anymore.
do with this whole.
Yeah.
You know,
no, this is the time. This is the time. I was wondering. Now I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just had some moral clarity.
Yeah.
Certainly there's nothing in the disclosure which suggests that this was triggered by any recent
Oh, right. Okay, so these are
misbehaviour.
two completely unrelated.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Peter Costello moving rapidly towards that journalist.
Yes.
And the journalist falling over. They're two completely unrelated events.
I imagine what happened, Charles, and I think the Chaser might have written about this, is he was just going about his ordinary Sunday.
Yes.
And suddenly he slipped on an advertising hoarding, and there he was, retired. It just happened like that. It snuck up on him.
Yeah.
I just want to know who's going to stop all these rogue advertising hoardings from interrupting people doing their job.
That's right. I mean, if Howard was still Prime Minister, we'd have a stop the advertising hoardings election, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's right. We're living in terror.
They're probably coming here in boats, aren't they?
Well, a boat's made out of advertising hoardings. Yeah, they float, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So what does Peter Costello do now, Charles, in his post-corporate
He's had an extraordinary career because he was Treasurer of Australia and squandered every opportunity to do anything. But, you know, like had a track record where he sort of...
Oh, there was the Future Fund.
No, and then he did the Future Fund after that. So he set up a Future Fund while he was Treasurer.
Which was only with the money he sold off from Telstra.
And then he's now he did that for a while.
He was sort of chair of the Future Fund, wasn't he?
Yeah, for years. And then Greg Combay, I think, is now the chair, isn't he?
It's where you stick your relatively competent ex-colleagues.
Yeah. And then he got to chair Nine Entertainment and then...
For quite some time.
Yeah. So he's been in the hallways of power.
He has.
Never really... I mean, I can't think of anything he's actually ever done. Except shoulder charge.
This is it. This is the highlight of his career, I'd say.
Do they have a sort of over 65s UFC?
A sort of wrestling.
Yeah.
Like a Masters.
Because I imagine, like, he's been at the top of everything that he's tried to do.
Except for Prime Minister, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, near the top.
I mean, near the top of many.
Well, so he could be the chair of the over 65s UFC.
I mean, look, The Rock's returned to UFC recently, Dwayne Johnson.
Right,
so it's never too late.
Yeah.
Peter Costello could take on The Rock.
Yeah.
It'd be extremely entertaining.
Although I'll tell you what, What if there were advertising hoardings in the the
arena.
ring? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
He'd need some.
I presume Costello would have a huge advantage because I've known that people apparently around him often slip up over things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, is there another cushy corporate job where this all gets forgotten, or has he just had enough at this? He's probably earned enough as chair of Nine to.
The truth is that you go where the money is, and I think that's been his career, right?
Sure.
And AUKUS.
Oh, see,
AUKUS
this is
where the money is dripping.
This is perfect. We've talked about this so much, is the amount of money available. And for all divisions, Charles, how much cheaper would it be rather than having all these nuclear submarines, which may never materialise, for hundreds of billions of dollars? You simply create a series of advertising hoardings in the ocean around Australia.
Yes, and China will just trip up over
just
them.
An invisible wall just beneath the surface of the water.
Without even us having to do anything.
Yeah. And we were, I'd be like, who left that there?
It would be very entertaining to watch as well.
It would be.
Yeah.
And just basically...
We could make a whole channel out of it.
A whole bunch of them, just a ring of steel, in a sense, around Australia.
I like that.
And
where would we get the steel from? Who would we buy?
We have to buy it from China. Yeah,
right.
No, we're using Australian raw materials that then got exported. Okay. Yeah. I think this could be a fantastic way to defend our country. Yes, and have some slapstick as well.
Okay, done.
And I can think of no better person to oversee their deployment than Peter Costello, because there's just around him, people like to advertise. What do you think the hoarding was for, by the way?
I hope it was for banana peels.
Queensland bananas.
Queensland bananas.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. I suppose it makes sense that News Corp is losing so much money. They lost $65 million last year.
And a huge number of employees.
And that is because they don't seem to be very advertiser supported, are they?
Wouldn't it be funny if the hoarding said by the Australian?
Yes.
But I think this is, as well, they've just lost a lot of employees, Charles. I don't know whether you saw. The massive redundancies. I mean, the senior executives were in town slashing and burning. Rebecca Brooks even came out.
Yeah.
She's apparently back in the...
So if you've got a dead teenage daughter, just make sure that their phone isn't hacked by the time you leave.
Yes, but if you need to get into the voicemail just to check if your child's all right, Rebecca can hook you up.
Yes, that's right.
But I just imagine that what they're going to do now, and I mean, again, Peter Costello could help with this, is for the future redundancy rounds, they'll just put all the journos into a giant room, fill it with advertising hoardings, make them all walk backwards and see who's left at the end.
I love it.
I mean,
there'd be no one.
People talk about the Hunger Games in this situation. What about the hoarding games?
Our gear is from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network.
Look around you, by the way, when filming backwards.
Yes, not enough blame put on the victim who was charged.
And Charles, are we at the end of this, do we find ourselves sympathising with someone who works for The Australian?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to immediately resign, but it's completely unrelated to this podcast.
Peter Costello, that's a pretty extraordinary achievement if he's managed to make people feel sorry
for somebody
who
an
investigative journalist from The Australian.
Yeah. That's going to be the achievement he's known for.
That's probably the point at which you should step. So forget the hoarding stuff. Making anyone feel sympathy for an Australian journalist, it's an unusual day in media.